Now, Ted Cruz, I had the opportunity to interview him not just once but twice, and people ask me all the time, "What exactly do you think about Ted Cruz? Is he the real deal?" And I will tell you that every single time I've had the opportunity to interview him, he has been more than the real deal. Very down to earth, very willing to talk to the media. That always tells me a lot about a candidate. I'm not going to say any names, but some of the other people that are very, very beloved by conservatives aren't very accessible to the media. And so those of us who are in the media wonder kind of what do they have to hide. So I always like to give you a little peek behind the curtain and say to you that this is one of those guys that I've met several occasions, always very down to earth, remembers people, and seems very accessible. Kind of gives me the feeling that he doesn't have a whole lot to hide. And I think that is one of the things we're looking for, a real person. Everybody says we want Reagan. Of course, Reagan would be ideal, but I can also say that there are other people out there who have many of those same traits. No one's perfect, but I do think that down to earth, that can connect with real people, that has had a real life with real life experiences and family and jobs and all those things is one of the things that I think the Americans are crying out for. Somebody who isn't golfing while our economy is going down the tubes. Somebody who isn't playing basketball with hip hoppers while we're trading terrorists for folks that may or may not even have loyalty to our country. So these are some of the things that I personally am looking for in a candidate. Ted Cruz has always been one of my favorite non-establishment Republicans in politics today. And Steve Deace wrote at the Washington Times that Ted Cruz is the establishment's pick for 2016. So I said, you get on this show and you come and you explain that headline. Welcome to Smart Life, Steve Deace. Good to have you.
Good to be back, Gina. Thank you.
You're going to have to explain this one because I had my hopes so vested in Ted Cruz being one of our top contenders for president, and you say he's part of the establishment. How's that?
It's a tongue-in-cheek headline, and the point of the column is that by their very actions, the establishment who hates Ted Cruz is giving him the best branding he could possibly buy or try to attempt to instill himself, because you're dealing with a base in the Republican Party, Gina, that doesn't like the leadership of the GOP much more than they like the Marxist leadership in the White House. And so to have someone that is just loathed by the people they also loathe, that's almost like a dog whistle. That's like people saying, hey, that's the one we want. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the guy you like the least. That's exactly the guy we want. They're helping him with their apoplectic meltdowns and frothing at the mouth headlines like we're going to get revenge on Ted Cruz. They're helping him. Those are to the benefit of Ted Cruz. Support from these people is more like a scarlet letter.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've also read what you wrote at townhall.com, Brat's Blueprint. And I have to tell you, I have to confess, we had, for Father's Day, it was Brat's Beer and Beach time for my husband. And that was all in celebration to Brat's victory we're very excited about. But last night I spoke to a group of folks up a little north of here in California. And one of them said to me, that whole Brat victory, don't you think that was just happenstance? We really don't have a long record of anybody beating the establishment. The establishment is going to win every time. Look, they won in California. Certainly, if you look at the Tim Donnelly versus the Cash Carey race in Alabama, the same thing happened. So is it a fluke or is there a blueprint, Steve?
The answer to both questions is yes. I mean, there is a blueprint, but it is a fluke to beat a majority leader in a primary for the first time since 1899. That is a bit of a fluke, but there are some things we can learn from it that are parallels of what's happening in Mississippi as well. For example, we are always told that we can only win low turnout elections when the most principled voters vote. But yet, Dave Brat won an election that 30% more voters voted in his primary than voted in Cantor's last primary in 2012.
Wait, I have to stop you there because this is so key. And I think this is something, Steve, that people miss all the time. You tell me that 30% more people voted. Why? We have to answer that why. It's because, and you can correct me or add to it, it's because we motivated the base with a conservative who didn't run away from the things that motivate the base, right?
You're exactly correct. If you look at the 2012 election, you look at independents in key battleground states. Romney won independents by 10 points in Virginia, lost. Won independents by 6 points in Ohio, lost. Won independents by 4 points in Colorado, lost. nearly tied independents in Florida, lost. He did what he was supposed to do with independents, yet he lost because they didn't turn out their base. He got a lower base turnout than even McCain got in 2008. In fact, Romney got a smaller percentage of the Mormon vote than George W. Bush got in 2004.
That's
if you look
terrible.
At what's happened, if you look at what's happened in that Virginia 7th District primary, the people that are sitting out, Gina, are not wishy-washy independents. What's happening is the most convicted and committed voters have decided. Undecided now means I don't even know if I'm going to vote at all. I don't know if it'll change. I don't know what difference it'll make.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Brat got those guys off out of their pews and gals and got them off the couch and got them to vote. The same thing worked for Chris McDaniel in Mississippi, a higher turnout election. He ended up ahead of Thad Cochran on primary day. What's happening now is that the establishment actually needs lower turnout elections to win, because that means the same people at the Rotary Club that have voted for the same Republican over and over again, the same guy at the country club that has voted for the same Republican over and over again, the same woman at the Women's Republican group that's voted for the same Republican who speaks at her banquet every year over and over again, they're the only ones that vote. What's happening is they're turning away grassroots conservatives around the country, and we can't win these primaries unless we run candidates that can turn those people out. And no matter who the nominee is, he can't win a general election unless he does the same.
You know, I think what you're saying right now, I really, and I don't drool on my guests very often, but I think what you're saying right now is probably the most important thing that's ever been communicated in media if we really want to take this country back. That we can no longer stand by the lies, Steve, saying that, oh, if we have low voter turnout, that's better for conservatives. That's a lie. You just proved that. Oh, if we moderate our message, we're going to be able to attract voters from the middle. That's a lie. The votes for conservatives come from the motivated base. We already know that 50% of conservatives who warm the church pews on Sunday actually vote in general elections. Those numbers are even lower in a primary election. And we also know, and this is mortifying, this is why I just wrote the book I wrote, that only 20% of women who call themselves evangelical and warm the church pews and pat themselves on the back because they're raising up an army bother to vote in a general election. That's embarrassing, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think conservatives have a little come to Jesus meeting for real happening right here.
I completely agree with that as well. And we need to stop listening to the propaganda that even comes from people that are supposedly on our side but are embedded in the 202 area code. What's happening to the Republican Party, Gina, is the old Reagan coalition is being replaced by a shaky coalition of corporatists and constitutionalists. And understand that in Karl Rove and the corporatist world, they have more disagreement with us than they do with Democrats. And it's not because they want the same Marxism the Democrats do. It's because the debate they have with the Democrats is simply who gets the money. That politics just becomes about vested interest. We are trying to fight for the survival of our way of life here. And that's why what's really happening is it's no longer Republican versus Democrat. It's now us versus them.
It is.
It's everybody against the Tea Party. It's everybody that believes in reining in the size and scope of government and defending any semblance of morality against the system. That's really what it is. And the people running the Republican Party, they're in on the scam as well. If you look at what's going on in Mississippi as we speak, in their primary 2 weeks ago, over 70,000 Democrats voted in that primary because they were mobilized to vote for Thad Cochran. That's the only reason it was as close as it was. And right now, one of former Mississippi Governor Haley Barbour, an establishment clown, one of his nephews is forming a PAC in Mississippi. The Clarion Ledger had this story yesterday to try and work black Democrat churches to turn out the vote for Thad Cochran in that runoff election next week. These people do stuff to us they would never do to the Democrats. They say stuff about us they would never say about the Democrats. And it's because we threaten their gravy train. And that's what electability has become, Gina. Electability has become whoever upsets or threatens the corporatist Marxist status quo, we cannot possibly let get elected. That's what it means.
I am, first of all, I'm going to hang your Brat's blueprint on my refrigerator, which I've never done with a news article before, because I want my children to understand this. And I am going to take this word out and credit you at every chance, because I've been trying to articulate these things for way too long, and you have done a beautiful job of dispelling so many myths. And there are more in here. Folks should find this article, townhall.com, Steve Deace, D-E-A-C-E. Another one is how you talk about the, stop splitting the conservative vote. And we don't have time to get to that today, Steve, but I want to have you back on as soon as you can fit us in your schedule, because what you're saying, I truly believe, is more important than anything else anyone is saying about reclaiming our republic. So thank you so much for being with us today, Steve.
Thank you, Gina. Always a pleasure.
All right. Likewise. Absolutely.